All right, my clock says 10 o'clock. So I have a title up here, Solving Cloud Regulatory Complexities with Open Source. I'm going to split that in half and just ask for a show of hands. Who's here for the Solving Cloud Regulatory Complexities part? That's near unanimous. Who's here because open source is in the title? There are hands for that. Okay. So I made an alternate title. Cloud controls are out of control. Other alternate title is Validating Compliance for Real this time. The thing is, I am very, very highly involved in the Linux Foundation and other open source communities. My employer, Sonatype, is a software security and dependency management company. We focus on the Java ecosystem and have the best product set in that area. And I don't touch any of that. I focus entirely on open source contributions. I'm a sponsored contributor to some of these projects that are up there on the screen. The top one, FINOS, is the Financial Technology Open Source Foundation. I got involved with them while I was working for Tier 1 banks several years ago, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more here in a bit. But I want to give you that background because I threw out my entire slide deck. I just decided we were going to talk about all of this kind of journey of like compliance and going into definitions. I was going to look at the GRC lens of what is governance, what is risk management, what is compliance itself in relation to those other things. Then it occurred to me, y'all already know that. And if you don't, let's have coffee. We'll have a longer talk. I was going to share about all the different work that Microsoft is needing to do because of how complex this is, and look at it from a CSP angle over the hundreds of different locations that need to be addressed and hundreds of different regulatory complexities that have to be navigated by a CSP. I was going to talk about how open source tooling has slowly been swallowed up by the cloud security posture management. I was going to just look at all the different regulatory controls that are out there right now and how it's gotten completely out of control. Was going to talk about regulators and security policies coming together to form control frameworks, and how the internal custom controls that we all build with our own configuration based on things like NIST is what creates our own internal control landscape. I was going to talk about the things in CNCF that I'm directly involved in, the open source efforts that we're doing to secure the ecosystem. And I was going to spend a lot of time on the current efforts coming out of FINOS, which I mentioned to you a minute ago. I'm going to talk about these here in a bit, but I'm not going to go as deep as I was planning on and telling you exactly what code is out there right now that's available for you to consume and where you can contribute and help create some of the different assets that are being released in the ecosystem. I'm not going to go that deep right now. We'll get a coffee if you want. Instead, I'm going to rewind. I'm going to rewind to where I was in 2020. Somebody pat me on the back for my bold decision to throw all my slides out. In 2020, I was working inside a Tier 1 bank as a consultant. I was providing services to them, and some of the consultants that I worked with at the time, Chris Allison and Ian Tivy, were looking at the different trends that we were seeing from all of our banks. And they came up with this idea of creating an automated test harness that could be scalable to build out behavioral validation for compliance controls. And when we rolled it out into my space, well, that was not what I meant to say. When we rolled it out into my ecosystem at a Tier 1 bank, one of the first things that we found was actually in contrast to an Azure policy. And so the response that we were given was like, oh, your behavior validator is wrong. We do have that Azure policy in place. And so we went back and we ripped up the code and we went through and we said, well, okay, this Azure policy says that this particular behavior is not possible. and yet we're doing it. And so we had a finding. We actually got to work with Microsoft to remediate this gap that they had where they said something was true, and it unfortunately wasn't. And this really is where I sunk my teeth into the idea and began to make it a small part of my own personality. Because right now, and especially back in 2020, we're forced to trust the service providers, right? We have a shared responsibility model, and inside of our institutions, we try to push this as much toward the CSP as we can, and they're constantly trying to push it as much towards us as we can. I think if we're kind in estimating, it ends up falling about 75% is the responsibility of the CSP to ensure security and compliance, and then we cross the rest of that gap, right? That's the shared responsibility model. But for me, it really resonated that we need a better way to trust that everyone is doing what they're responsible for. In 2021, there was a lot of different things happening. I'm going to put up on the slides the things that were happening in the world while I was working in a bank, delivering infrastructure to 20 different applications at the time. I was a tech lead for 2 different teams, and we built out our promotion pipelines for all of our cloud infrastructure. It was my COE was all Azure, so that's why we were talking about Azure policies and Microsoft and stuff. But we didn't get a whole heck of a lot of progress on this compliance validation work while it was going. It was constantly churning. It was constantly a need. It was constantly in the back of the head, but there wasn't a whole lot of progress happening in it. Around 2022, I started seeing things pop up in the market where there are different niche tools that exist that are solving these behavioral validations for Kubernetes specifically or another service. But it's not scalable to where I would be able to drop it into the 20 different deployment pipelines that we have and be able to just scan everything up and roll it up. And so there's still this known gap. And at the same time, regulatory complexities are just getting worse and worse. There's just more coming down on the things that we need to be thinking about, the things that we need to be doing. And it was kind of overwhelming to think about all the different controls and regulations and all these different conversations that are happening. But at the same time, it's kind of exciting for me because I'm looking at this and I'm saying, hey, this is really good if we can validate these. All of these different regulations that are coming out are well-intentioned. If they are implemented in a viable way, they can produce a secure, they can get us closer to a good level of cloud security. And I was actually really excited in 2023 when Citibank led a massive initiative to recruit as many different financial service institutions as possible to define a set of common controls. And so as all these different regulations are happening, we start consolidating. And the goal is, let's take these different participants who are at the table and subject to international regulatory bodies, be it Australia, Singapore, Europe, UK, EU, US, right? All these different regulatory bodies that we have to deal with. Let's find out what are the common pieces. And so that's where earlier I threw up the Common Cloud Controls logo, and I didn't put it on this slide. I put it there. But the fun thing is that this year, we're actually getting to the point where we do have a really scalable way to start producing those common controls. But the rest of the market, the rest of the world, the current state of things is very much still, now here I'm going to use these slides, that people like Citibank are doing the exact same thing as people such as Google and Microsoft and AWS, where we're creating these comprehensive control mappings. We're needing to go in and look at all these regulatory standards and these ISOs and NISTs and all these kinds of things and create a spreadsheet where we map them together and say, hey, this is what I'm doing to lock down this behavior and it accomplishes these different controls. And one of the only ways that we're really successfully making progress on validating those is through config scanning. Doing an API call to look at a JSON output that says encryption equals true. And that's one of the most effective currently available methods for ensuring that we have compliance at scale. And annual audits, right? The CSPs and all of us working out in enterprises need to do the same thing, where we have to answer these questions. We have to screenshot a snippet of code and send it off to somebody to say, oh, this is how I'm accomplishing a particular thing. And they say, good job, you passed that audit. And again, there are niche tools that exist for behavior validation, but not at scale and not for all the different things that we need. So this is the space right now where I am bullish. I'm absolutely bullish, because if we can start coming in and defining these common cloud controls, and we've been doing this for about the last year, and we've got a lot of the workflow issues worked out, and we've still got a really good buy-in from different people in the community that I've mentioned before. And let me see if I have a slide about it. Yeah, these are the folks that are currently involved with it in a high-speed capacity. And there's a lot more folks that are involved in this space right now, addressing this problem that's been on my radar, that I've been chewing on and thinking about. And this is why I'm really, really excited, is because we have people from the world's biggest and most impactful institutions that are coming together and saying, hey, we agree that the controls are out of control and that the validation is not currently sufficient. There's one CSP that I spoke to who is contributing to this space, and they shared with me that there's a pain point where they were recently on a call with a client, and they had an engineer that was needing to answer a bunch of compliance questions and discuss, these are the ways that we're locking things down, these are the ways that we're solving those problems and addressing your concerns. And the person that I was speaking with said that they had to hold their tongue, because they were the only person on the call who knew that document that they were referencing was 11 months old, and nobody had updated it since, even though there had been daily updates to the service that was being discussed. So we have a Word doc that documents, oh, these are all the ways that cloud service is being locked down and secured, and here's all the documentation around it. And then it sits in a directory somewhere for a year until somebody asks, like, hey, can you walk me through that and actually show me how you're doing that? And that document gets pulled out, even though it might not actually match the current state of the code base. And that's something that we want to move past. We want to move past that to where that's not an issue that the CSPs have, and that's not something that we as consumers need to be worrying about. And that's why both of these groups are, both sides, the enterprise and the service provider, are at the table right now. So on the left side here, sticking with my original slides might have been more cohesive for this. On the left side, we have the definition of common security controls. So you'll have a service such as service category, such as object storage. Now there's lots of different services that fall underneath object storage, but if you are delivering an object storage service, there are going to be certain features that are going to be in place. Think about a relational database. Every relational database is going to have the ability to make SQL commands, to create a user, to create, read, and update and delete interactions and objects within the database. And so those common features are going to have common threats and security controls that can be implemented across them. And so within the Common Cloud Controls project, what we're working on is defining those, capturing those, doing threat-informed controls for service categories. And then within the compliant financial infrastructure space, what we're working on is taking all of those things and actually building secure by default infrastructure, think Terraform, and turning it on and saying, hey, we have flipped every switch that we need to flip to have our MySQL be compatible with the RDMS common controls. Now, this isn't going to get us all the way to PCI compliant. This isn't going to be FedRAMP ready, but this is going to be a very significant percentage of the way towards that. And we are going to be able to point our behavior validators towards it. And this is something that we've built out. We have a custom suite, a test harness that is entirely focused on validating cloud service behaviors. So this is the set of tests where we're actually going to go in and try to create a user with an admin account and say, yep, cool, I can create a user with an admin account. And then try to create a user with a non-privileged account and make sure that that's actually not happening. This is the end of what I have prepared. The thing that I wanted to do with this time is really open this up to kind of hear from folks in the room about the different gaps that you guys have and the spaces where you're seeing opportunities to consolidate and create common controls, I need to collect my thoughts because I'm remarkably bad at being photographed. Fun fact, yeah. No, yeah, I'm just like, yeah, get off my slide. All right, thank you. All right, appreciate it. So yeah, that being considered, we've had a lot of progress in this space over the last few years. And can I ask who in here works at who here provides financial services through your products that you deliver? Some sort of like financial related product. Of those, who here works in banking services, like something like JPMC, a bank? A couple. And then other fintech, providing general services, things like that is the rest of us. So I'm curious, from that perspective of the products that you're delivering, the compliance needs that you guys have in your current institution, where do you see space for consolidation or automation? Does that question resonate with anybody? Audit. Yeah. When was the last time that you needed to do an infrastructure audit like you just described? What day is it? You got to do it constantly, right?
Yeah, seriously. Every time we integrate with another third party, every time we want to work with another financial entity, anytime we want to open a bank account in another country,
Yeah.
audit.
Every new work stream that exists, you have to do an audit. It's bonkers. So what does that audit look like? Is it different every time, or do you have kind of the same workflow? Is this something you guys could master? You're just like, oh yeah, we got the ninjas we send out to do that.
Yeah, like different institutions ask for different stuff. Like we need to work for, we want to make sure you can compliant, they'll ask for the questions. If we want to know more for something like this framework, they'll ask those questions. So we just have sort of a master audit plan, what we call it. And then we just jump in with the ways that makes sense to them.
Yeah. So it's sometimes NIST, it's sometimes PCI, it's sometimes something else, but you've got a master document and you just pull out the ones that they need.
Yeah, because there's no industry standard, it might be a little bit of anything.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's exactly where we're trying to come at this from the consolidation of those common controls. And we are hearing some positive signals from regulators that are saying like, hey, if that did exist and if more people were adopting that and conforming to that, then there is a desire to start moving expectations in that direction. Something else that resonated with me was you're needing to constantly prove these things. And if you could just run a script, right, drop it in your CI pipeline, then that would be something that would save you guys probably a significant amount.
Yeah, because it also goes back to the dev cycle, right? Because now we have to make security compliance part of our code process. If you've ever met a developer, you're going to want to cut every corner you can to just match the production. So now it feels like I'm constantly
feature work is being directly impacted by security work and compliance and audits, and that if it's anything like institutions that I've collaborated with, you end up having a adversarial relationship within your own organization where you all have shared goals, but because feature work and compliance work is at odds with each other, it becomes adversarial.
Yeah, we have sales and product functions to add more features. And I'm kind of putting a case saying, well, we have to do it in a secure way, we have to do it compliant. And, you know, someone would have to be that problem. But that's secure, there's kind of expanded.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
Can't negotiate your way out of compliance, right? It's like, could you just like put your name on it and say that it's okay? Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
So yeah, it's like it's this constant control that hits every level of the organization.
Yep.
So if there's things that I can do that would alleviate that, to make it not such a burden, so that I can turn it into like a 5-minute exercise or a 5-hour exercise, then that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm hoping is that for situations like yours, where you're hitting every single level of the organization and creating obstacles and pitfalls and adversarial relationships and all these kinds of things. My vision for 2025 is that we will have production-ready controls and validators and infrastructure as code that can be just readily consumed by your organization, ready in the open source space. The goal right now that we have is there's a end of September milestone that we have to deliver well, actually it's totally in the public space. We're working heavily with Microsoft to deliver a AI reference architecture where we have looked at every single underpinning surface that's required for a RAG LLM, a particular deliverable. And then we look at every single underpinning service. We build out the controls with contributions from the community, and then we build out validators in the same way. And then we have these maybe 10 sets of controls that could be used regardless of your service provider. And then these 10 or so validators that are ready to be deployed into a CI pipeline or wherever it is that you're doing this. And once that's ready, and once those resources are delivered, it will give us the ability to do what you're describing, that level of automated auditing and evidence gathering in the SDLC process, to where the developers will know when they make a change exactly what the impact is, exactly what compliance thing has been hit by that. And you'll be able to know at any point without querying your developers, what is the state of my compliance, because you can just look at these pipelines. And so that is the vision for the like Q3, Q4 of this year. And I have a strong confidence that by this time next year, these pains that you're experiencing, that I think everybody is experiencing, will be dramatically alleviated and lifted thanks to the community involvement. And so the big call to action, I suppose, before opening it up to general questions, would be that if this is something that's resonating with you, if this is something that you folks are interested in, there is a need for increased contribution, especially on the validator development side. That's a work stream that was paused while we've been focusing on the control definitions. And we're just now revitalizing the validator workflows. And so we have loads of people involved, loads of people working on it. But if you want to see your interests represented, your services being brought into this to these milestones, then it would be beneficial for you and everybody in the community if you have a way to get involved and come into that open source space and help us accelerate it. So that's the call to action, and we have a few minutes for questions.
I got a question for you. Can you go back a couple of slides? That's it. So the people that are in the mission lab, where's Amazon?
Yeah. So they're in the community, they're in the conversations, but they have very good reasons to they like their justifications for being just a little bit late to market on this one. they're comfortable being late to market on this one, but they are in the conversations. They are participants in the community. They're members of the foundation, but they're comfortable right now with being a little bit late to market. It is me trying to not put words in somebody else's mouth. Yeah. 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 PCI was a root canal. Absolutely. So one of the benefits of us segmenting this, we've got it segmented right down the middle, even though it's largely the same contributors to the control definitions and the automation and implementation side. The benefit to it is that we're defining the common cloud controls. We're on the left side, we're focused on object storage. On the right side, we're focused on a Google or Microsoft or AWS implementation of it. And so once these common cloud controls are defined, anybody in the community could come in and start working on how we are implementing that for a specific cloud provider. It could be Oracle, it could be anything, right? It is scalable to go in any direction, and it is community led. So if the development, if the hunger to work on it and contribute is there, we have capacity and space to be able to support those efforts. Do you guys have any questions about just the open source communities in general? As I mentioned earlier, I'm highly involved in both security and compliance efforts across the Linux Foundation. And if you guys have any interest or curiosities about just how that's going, I'd be interested to field any questions on that right now, if that's something that comes to mind for you guys. But I don't see anybody jumping. How active is it? I would say it's very active. Somebody recently quoted. So there are different ways to get involved, and some of the ways to get involved are just through dialogue and talking and meeting with people and sharing thoughts. And then there are ways to get involved with contributing code and like directly developing on things. And depending on where you land, you're going to see different levels of different types of engagement. But in both cases, we see very high levels of engagement. The most recent FINOS all community call had hundreds of people just joining in to stay up to date. I think there's 400 registered code contributors right now across the ecosystem. It's nothing compared to CNCF, where I also spend time, where we have 150 code projects and maintainers and contributors and consumers and all this kind of stuff to keep track of. So if we want to do it relative to other foundations, that's one conversation. But if we want to do it relative to the progress that we need to be making, there is a significant level of activity currently happening in that space. Yeah. All right. Well, everybody, I really appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of the conference.